Those of you that it's your first assembly, welcome. Glad to have you here. For those that have been to other assembly sessions we've had, welcome back. I guess a small part about us, and I'll flick through some slides that you'll see come up on the screen as well. Again, we were established mainly thinking about collaboration within the Black community. Think about how do we get the organisations that are representing some of the tireless hard work in our communities across multiple pillars. If we think about youth and young people, think about families, food poverty, sports and health and well-being, how do we really support community organisations come together when it comes to scaling and growth for their organisations and for our community as well? Behind that, again, it was also really important to us that we were able to, for the community, be able to show what an input from diverse leadership, so having Black organisations and Black leaders of the community really be able to stamp and give their input into the community, the wider community, to show what it is when we actually represent our cultures and we bring our full selves to the community to really support and uplift the community as well. So through our various pillars, as I mentioned, we work with different organisations, community-led organisations, businesses, SMEs, and so on, to ensure that we can really collaborate and identify any sort of pain points and challenges that together we can work through. So sessions like this, when we identify key subjects for our stakeholder organisations, we would always put on an assembly session where we can really get into some of the information that, again, by sharing, could really help some organisations to progress further as well. So again, pleased to have you as part of this. Our trustees, you'll see us all here today, darted around the room. Myself, we have Rachel standing here as well, Dylan, Nicholas at the back, and Carl. You will be able to see them as we network and progress on. Again, all of us representing sort of different disciplines from sort of business, corporate backgrounds, as well as sort of community-led leadership as well. So really, again, we identify other stakeholders in the community that can support our initiatives and that we can also support. Being a CIO, it means we can really add sort of scale and weight to organisations that may be CICs, non-profits, or just community groups, really thinking how they can become a legal entity and reach more people. So that's really our aim. So today, again, for you all, we put together this panel that could really speak on some of the sort of finance, not just challenges, but some of the potential opportunities there are, thinking about different legal entities and structures and the different finances that are available to them as well. We want from you to take from this, again, maybe you're from organisations that have seen some of similar challenges, or you're thinking about your own journeys when it comes to financing your organisations. We want you to be able to take something from this information-wise, but also to think about the others that you have in the room that could be in the same sort of position and space as you, or could even support what it is you're doing as well. So again, as I said, feel free to grab any of us if you want to know more information on the charity itself. You'll find more through our newsletter. If you haven't signed up, there'll be opportunities to sign up today as well, where we can share sort of any initiatives that we're doing in the communities as well, or any sort of events like this that we will have. So, I mean, without further ado, I am going to pass to our fantastic host for the day, Antoine Elaine, who's going to come up and tell you a bit more about today's session and introduce the guests as well.
How is everyone? It's good. I like to put energy. Someone's cold. I want to thank you all for coming, because as I was saying to our panelists, often it can feel like a lonely space when you're trying to help the community. But when you're in a room like this, when you're connected to the Black Society, you realise there's lots of people trying to help the world, trying to help the community. But through coming together, we can make our lives a little bit more easy. I'm Antoine Allen. I'm an ITV News presenter, so if you watch the BBC, you know who I am. So hopefully you do. But today's not about me. It's me asking hopefully good questions to our esteemed panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, so we go from right to left. Ray, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Baya Dileja. I run Do It Now. We're an infrastructure organization focusing on providing training, support, and funding to Black-led charities, social enterprises, and soon, very soon, we have a program out for profit businesses as well. So, yes, that's me.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
You've got the microphone.
Great. Hi everyone, it's good to see such a packed room, especially when it's cold outside and dark, which I think just reflects that this topic is so important. As a way of introduction, I'm Joe Vassasavi. I'm the Managing Director of an organisation called ARC Group International. We support small growing businesses to access grant funding. use that grant funding to de-risk and leverage private finance. So it's a blended finance model that we run. I will pause there.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Maya Samankwa and I'm a multi-award winning entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. And my specialism is private businesses in terms of funding and also working with CICs, charities and social enterprises to raise funds. So myself and my team have done about 18.5 million, helping mainly the BAME communities to get funding and then also working with women as well. So I've seen the journey. I've been running a business for about 24 years, and I've seen how things have changed and digressed in terms of our community. And so I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Basedi. I'm the Director of Operations for a charity called The Wickers. Called The Wickers because we're based in Hackney Wick. We support young people aged 8 to 21, and I'll keep it short and sweet. We provide them with opportunities, whatever that looks like for the individual young person. We provide sort of like a holistic approach to supporting them and their families.
So we'll begin off. I know some of you are on different stages of your journey, whether it's fundraising or your charity, but we'll start with a very simple question. If you were to give a word of advice to someone who's starting a charity or already has a charity and they're looking for funding, what would be the first bit of advice? Go to you first.
I think sometimes the mistake is we go out straight away to look for funding. For me, the first approach is a resource. Who is that resource? Who is that individual? What is that resource that can help you get to the funding? So I think for me, just think of resources as opposed to funding initially.
Thank you. I think, first of all, people need to think about the structure that they want, because when we use the word charity, it's such a huge area. So is it that you want to be a CIO and run a full-blown charity, or is it that you want to be a CIC or a social enterprise so that you can also have a kind of business arm? So I think that's the most important thing about your structure, and also to understand that when you do open up a charity, CIC or a social enterprise, it's not just about you, it's about bringing others. So your directors, your trustees, it's about the community, so you can't make all the decisions. And most importantly is having that plan, that roadmap, making sure that you understand where you're going, what your vision is, what your purpose is, how you're going to get there, when you're going to get there, and then being able to identify some of the things that are going to happen on the road, so the bumps and the humps. But be prepared for that as well, and also not getting funding as well is also another area. If you don't get funding, what do you do? So those are things to think about. Thank you.
Thanks. I totally agree with what both Sam and Mavis has said. I think the one thing I would add is when you're either starting or you have an existing social enterprise or charity, essentially you're trying to solve a problem. That's what you set out to do. You've got a vision to solve the problem, and often that's a journey that you have to take, and fundraising becomes part of that journey. The one tip I would mention is that the fundraising isn't the vision. The problem you're solving is the vision, which means that as you go through that journey, being able to keep the problem you're solving as the anchor and have structures in place, look at the resources or the means to the end, which is what the fundraising is trying to do, then you can be a bit more creative around how you fundraise and how you achieve the vision that you're trying to get to.
In trying to add to all of that, the perspective that I think I see the most often is as a funder, as an intermediate funder with a focus on our community. It's the kind of dotting your I's and crossing your T's. It's the most basic one, but read the guidance document properly. It's really terrible. It's really quite awful when you see an incredible organization that's done a lot of work on their application, but then they're not eligible. And you have to remove them because you have a contract that says this is who you're going to put through, no matter how incredible the organization is. If they're not eligible, they're not eligible. So make sure you have checked the eligibility criteria. Make sure you have asked the questions about any ambiguity. If you're not understanding something, email them, call them, make sure you get an answer before you spend that time filling in an application.
Okay, we'll move on to a question that hopefully will be one that many of you will not answer to. What do you think are some of the key steps to solve the barriers faced by Black-led organisations seeking funding in the the UK? The mic's with you.
Another one. Some of the key barriers it's so the sector changes often, and one of the things that we have to be really aware of is how the tide is shifting before we get swept up in it. And because so many of us aren't in the rooms and we aren't able to kind of notice because we're actually running the organization, we're kind of head down in the actual thing, it's very easy to get swept up and then suddenly wake up and see, wait, hold on. This funder that I've been relying on for the past 3 years and going back every year to get 20,000, 30,000, whatever the amount is, suddenly they're not funding my area anymore. And when did that decision happen? Who at the top was making that decision? What consultation was there? The truth is, for the most part, most funders, at least in the past couple of years, have been advertising when they're talking about changing their strategy, when there's something going on. If we're not paying attention to those moments, we don't get to then, they don't then take us seriously when we're complaining about the outcome later. So the thing that is really important to find the time for, and I fully understand it, how difficult it is, but find the time to read the sector news. Sign up to the sector newsletters and see, wait, what's happening? How is this trend building? How is this affecting me? Oh, wait, there's a bunch of money coming into youth sector services coming up. Who's getting that money? And let me start making friends with those grant managers to see that they make sure they think of me first when anything is about to be announced, because that's how this sector works.
Sam, I know you wanted to add.
Yeah, we're supposed to go to Mavis, but I've got the mic, so I'll just go on. I think for me, we can speak about implicit bias, unconscious bias, but for me, it's not unconscious, it's very conscious. But I will speak about the opportunities, because with every stumbling block, it's just an opportunity. There's a lack of community. The word community means you share resources and you share knowledge. We often fail to share our resources and share knowledge when we start off a new project, a new charity. I think if we work together, we collaborate, we can come together as a community and we're stronger together. I mean, we've had some conversations today about just unifying so our different strengths and coming together to actually solve a community issue that we have. But I think that word community, we need to look into and actually start acting as communities and being a lot closely linked together.
I think the realization of that for today is to make sure that before you leave, you connect with the people around you and you follow the organisation so you can share that knowledge. Mavis, I know you have good points.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need to come outside of our comfort zones. I think that's one of the main things that I see with a lot of the businesses. We talk about our community, but sometimes we have to go out of our comfort zones and go and look. And I think we also have to work towards that kind of that feeling that, because of who we are, and we're going to get knockbacks. We're going to get knockbacks no matter what colour you are, what background, you're going to get knockbacks in business, in everything that you do. So I think you have to really kind of strive for the best. You also have to think big, think bigger, think a big picture. When we talk about charities, I think of the big ones, Oxfam, I'm going to be like Oxfam. If I think about companies, I'm going to be like this massive company, Microsoft. And I think if we have that bigger vision and we work together collectively and come out of our comfort zones, we can definitely solve some of the problems, because most of the time we're just in our little circle and some of us are not seeing that. We've got so much passion, we've got so much vision, we've got so much ability, and also at the same time, the opportunities are there. When people say to me, there's not an opportunity because of who I am and my background, I kind of say, no, that's not necessarily true. You have to go and get it, and then when you go for it, you just have to keep going. When you fall down, you just get back up. Thank you.
I'm going to go to you, Joris, for the second question, but before we move on, does everybody know what blended finance means? Joris, I know you're an expert in this, so simply put, what does blended finance mean?
So I think, can I just add something to the last question as well, because I think it would help to ease into that. So the landscape, I think Bayo mentioned, the landscape of funding changes. It shifts based on priorities, politics, research, whatever. So one of the key things is that we can't rely on external grant funding, for instance, which is it's the work we do, because grant funders' priorities will change. You can aim for it and put applications in and absorb grant funding, but it needs to be useful. It needs to generate something beyond that grant funding. Because again, the landscape shifts and changes. So your business model, the problem that you're trying to solve, can't rely 100% on that. That needs to be a fuel within that. Going to the question of blended finance, what blended finance is different types of finance, different types of finances with different agendas, being able to work together for a common vehicle. So for instance, grant funding and a loan, for instance, those are two different types of funding that an organization should be able to absorb, but you have to be strategic about how you're going about that. The grant is what's called a concessional type of funding, so it's below market average. A grant, for instance, is based on impact. You want to be able to reach a funder in terms of having a mutual impact, and a loan, for instance, is they want a return from that loan. So I'm answering it a bit long-winded, but hopefully it makes sense. Essentially, just think about different types of finance being able to work together, and you having to draw those different finances.
And still with you, Jonas, what's the benefits of blended finance, and when should an organisation be looking to?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the first point that I mentioned, is the vision of your organisation. What are you trying to do? Work through the journey of creating a structure, formula, business model that works for you, and then see how these different types of finances could fit in. So rather than just going out and saying, okay, I'm going to chase this grant funding, that loan, etc., that's fine, but it doesn't have a solid foundation. Instead, you work on your business, and you know there's an avenue for grant funding to support me here. Let's apply for grant funding, give this a purpose, allow for it to generate some sort of financial resilience, whether that's you're building out a new revenue stream, creating an asset with that grant funding, and then you attract other types of funding. Does that answer the question?
I had to admit to Jovis earlier that I didn't know what blended finance was until I followed him on LinkedIn and researched it. And I actually realized that we've been using blended finance for a number of years. Whilst we're working towards our journey of sustainability, we've been receiving a loan from one of our supporters, and then when we get our grants, we pay it back. So from the same organization, we receive grants, but also we receive this element that actually we're giving this back. So again, it comes back to, we'll probably speak about this later on, education. Just by being on the panel with this gentleman here, I was able to research and realize actually I've been using this element, I didn't realize I was using it. So again, I think for me, it helps to collaborate, helps to read up on people, and listen, copy and paste. Sometimes you don't always have to start from the ground up. Just see what's going on around you and reach out to people.
Bayo, why is it important for people to know about blended finance and as many options as they can?
I think exactly that, you are responding to what is happening in real time in your organization, and the fact that there are so many shifts and changes, the fact that there are very strict restrictions to how you can use grant funding, despite the fact that it's not repayable. It's as you were saying, it's still based on very strict impact measurements or goals that are external to your organization and what you are trying to do. So the challenge that you're often facing as an organization is how far you bend before you break when it comes to grant funding, because you're trying to find something that suits you, but the challenge is to not do so much bending that you end up contorting yourself into something that doesn't feel like you anymore. And mind you, funders are working with thousands of organizations with the same process every single time. So your own ability to say, actually, I don't need this. I have this other thing in the back pocket. Like colloquialisms, it's FU money, basically. Like the ability to say, actually, I've got my merchandise, I've got my consulting, I've got all of these other pockets. So by the time you get to grant funding as an idea, this is an opportunity to elevate something in a different way. And this is something that feels natural and well-fitting and we're well aligned. You never want to be in a position where you are so beholden to a funder, because as lovely as that grant manager is, everything is shifting constantly. The trustees are changing, but the new trustee comes a new vision. With a new director comes a new strategy. Like the amount of times that the strategy changed during COVID, post-COVID, the cost of living crisis, then wait, are we spending too much money on Black and global majority communities? What happens to disabilities? Where's disabilities? Wait, Black people have disabilities too? Really? What? Like it was constantly moving and moving and moving. And you just had to follow them until they stopped and then said, wait, hold on. Where's the Black community in this still? And no one's doing it on purpose. One of my good friends is a funder in a traditional foundation, and I was having a really hard time, and I just took her out to lunch, and I didn't mean to, but I basically berated her for everything that's happening in the sector, and she was just trying to explain how everyone is a good person, everyone is doing their absolute best within the system that exists, and until the system itself changes, we just have to figure out how to work with what we've got. So being cognizant of where your different levers are and what you can take in depending on your legal structure is very important for the vision of your organization and being able to actually achieve it.
Mavis, I saw you nodding your head to some of those statements. What advice would you give to someone in terms of picking the right funding or the right?
That's a good one, because I think, as Bayo said, things change all the time. What you wanted to do 3 months ago can change, very suddenly. And I mean, we look at the current crisis that we're in at the moment, and now you've got to look in so many different places, but you've got to understand. And I think that's one of the important things, understanding education and finding out, is this really for you? Because someone would say, okay, yeah, why don't you go for a grant? Why don't you go for a loan? Or why don't you go for investment? Why don't you go for equity? And you're thinking, God, which one do I want? You need to actually be sure about what you want. And then you need to kind of just have, I always say to people, put yourself in a matchbox. As much as there's lots of blended finance, which is great, to pick 3 and stick to that and have a long-term vision. Because I think when you are an entrepreneur, when you are a business, whether it's a social entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, there's always like a roller coaster. You're going up, down, round, backwards, forwards. But I think with the blended finance, there is options. So it's looking at what is the option for you and then working on a plan that's going to work and having a backup plan. I think that's one of the biggest problems that I see in Black businesses as well. Like there's one plan, it all goes wrong and that's it. But you have to have so many different plans. So blended finance is a great opportunity to look. And again, as the buyer said, there's trust foundations, there's smaller places to get grants, there's the banks, there's so many places to get money. If you actually look at the industry of the charity, CIC, social enterprise, do you know how much the industry has in money? It's £6.5 billion. So it's £6.5 billion, and there are 3,200 funders giving grants. So you look at that and you think, well, I only want 0.0, but it's understanding how that works and how would that work with other finance, how would that work with your loans, how would that work with all the money you've been fundraising. Some of you are doing donations as well. How's your donations going? Is it online? Is it crowdfunding? It's lots, but what you need to do is understand at least 4, 5, 6, 7 of those and then pull out 3 or 4. But it's definitely a way forward. And people don't realize it's there, but people just need to go and look at the diversity and go, these 3 or 4 are for me. And then just when anyone else speaks to them about other things, they go, okay, don't worry, I'm just going to do these 3 or these 4, because it can get overwhelming as well.
Thank you, that's great. We've looked at looking at the landscape and trying to assess which pots of money is good for my organisation. If we flip it around, how can an organisation make themselves a better fit for capital funding? What do they need to do to go from small and scale? I'll go to you first.
Anton, can I quickly add something to that last question? Sorry to interrupt. I just think it might be important. With the blended finance, it's also important to look at things from the perspective of the funder as well. Funders think in terms of risk, and when it comes to your strategy as an organization, you have to play the game as well. So concessional grant funding, essentially that's de-risking an organization. It's saying that I can go to a bank if I'm looking at a loan and say, I've got 50k from this grant on this particular project. Can you now support me? It's the same way, for instance, if you're taking out a mortgage on a house. You need to have a deposit because it gives the bank confidence that you're able to pay that back, etc. So think from also the perspective of the funder and how they would interpret risk, and then strategically try and see how those different finances blend together.
So again, in terms of making the organisation more attractive for capital funding and that transition and that scale, what are the pitfalls that you think some organisations face?
I'm looking at this gentleman at the back, Carl from London Youth. I think governance, for me, is a great starting point. We've been going for 6 years, and we've always punched above our weight because we got our governance right from the offset. Also, utilising the abilities of the people, the strengths of the people around you. Are you ready to go from a small charity to a medium charity, but your staff are not having the right qualifications, the right training? Are they ready mentally, physically, even so like in terms of, recently I got a small pot of funding from Carl's organisation, and I had to send someone else around there, was it yesterday or Tuesday, to go to the networking event. It's about just ensuring that you are growing and your staff are growing along with you. You can't always do everything yourself. You can't be so like the cleaner, the director, and everything. If you are everything to everyone, it means your members of staff are lagging behind. It means you're not ready to scale. You haven't got the right policies in place. Who's checking your policies? Who's ensuring that actually you are making the right decisions, for the benefit of the organisation? Are you sticking to your vision? Are you sticking to your mission? So I think for me, I would say governance. Get your governance right. Get your people right. Ensure that everyone's travelling and growing along with the organisation at the right time.
Though, what would you say is the best bit of advice or planning for an organisation that's trying to scale and trying to transition?
I completely agree with all of that. I'm just thinking about Do It Now's growth journey over the past 4 years or so. It's a math game as well when you're considering the risk. So the amount of money you can ask for is directly correlated to the amount of money you have reported in the previous year. So I was dogged about how much I was going to raise because I wanted to raise a particular number in order for me to scale the following year. So my conversation was, we're closing at this number, we're closing at this number. This is my management accounts. This is the letter from the accountant. This is the bank statements. I need to know that you are okay with that number because I'm going to ask you for 30% of that number for next year. I'm going to ask 5 other funders for 30% of that number next year. And I'm going to keep going until you go from one grant that is 10,000 to another grant that is 100,000 to another grant. It's maths. It's actually very simple maths, but it is maths. So thinking about if you are going to do that, what I didn't do was the thing he said. So it was extremely stressful because you do need to take the team with you. And I was just like, energy, go, 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 and realized that I was burning out and everybody was burning out and it was too quick. So it took a long time to get to a place where it was like, okay, actually, we've now thankfully delivered all of that. Let's spend the next 6 months just thinking about where we go next and how we can plan. So now, because I basically was having constant team meetings of I was like a football coach in one of those American movies, just stick with me through this. I promise you, I could see the other side of this. We are going to get there. And it was just hyping the team up constantly, just get to the other side because it's a math equation. I promised them that if we hit this number and we can fundraise to this level, we will be fine. And geez, it was really hard. We did get there and it was very tough and we lost people along the way because it was a lot of work. But we got there and it was about how do we now use the kind of respect that we've gained from the sector, use the numbers that we've gained, use the impact that we've created, doing all the right things with impact measurement, being able to prove that we didn't just hit numbers, we actually made an impact. Use that evidence to say, okay, now I need you guys to talk to me about 2 to 3 years of funding on this. I need you guys to come onto what we're doing and be on our page instead of us following you. And I don't think that there is a right way to scale in this space because every part of the sector does it differently. If you're working with children, you cannot scale the way that we did. If you're working with elderly, if you're working with in sport, there's just so many different nuances. So the thing to do is watch what everybody else did. Like I was obsessed with the Turn to Us journey. Oh gosh, what's his name? Lord Adebowale, I think. Yeah. He was the CEO of Turn to Us. He took it from, I think it was 2 million to 20 million over a year, over the 17 years that he was there. Have not gotten a meeting with him, but it was for a long time. I was obsessed with getting a meeting with him just to understand how he did that. Like, just find out who's done it. What have they done? Watch what they've done. Even if you can't get a meeting with them, look at what news articles have come out with them telling their story. Are they speaking somewhere? Go and hear them speak. Go and listen to how they think. If scale is what you're chasing. Because I thought, we'll wrap up. I thought, but do it now to be able to solve the problem that we're trying to solve, we would have to be an 80-person team doing like 10 million a year, whatever the numbers were at the time. I realized there's actually a much cheaper way, a more effective way of doing it. So we're not chasing that goal anymore. But I was able to map that out because I'd seen a bunch of different people doing it. So if there's a way that you've seen someone do it, go and ask them the hard questions, and hopefully they're honest with you about the hardship and the lessons that they learned, so that you can kind of curve some of those.
Before we go to our last question, which is another important one, maybe there'll be people in the audience who think, okay, I do want to get more staff, I do want to bring more people in, or I'm afraid they're not going to have my vision or my effort. How do you navigate that pitfall? How do you pick the right person?
That's an interesting one. I've been around for about 24 years. I know I only look 25, but I'm not. At 25 years in business, it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's absolutely hard. But one thing I learned when I first started business, and those of you that know me, they say, look, that's the funding lady. Before I was the PR lady, now I'm the funding lady. But one thing I learned was that about 3 years into the business, I got really ill. I was burnt out and I got something called shingles. And that was because I was doing everything and I was trying to be that best person and everything, and I was fighting. And I realized that I needed a team. And without a team and the right people, you cannot scale up, no matter how you look at it. So my journey has been a real up and down one, because that's business. You go up, you go down. Whether it's a charity, whatever it is, it's a business. At the end of the day, you need to bring an income to make something happen. So I think for me, one of the things I would say is, one, be an expert in what you do and stick to that. What are you an expert in terms of your area? Number two, unique. What makes you unique? What makes you different from everybody else? Especially when it comes to funding and all of these things, because everybody's going for the same thing, but it's only how you're going to get number one or get that money or get that sale is the uniqueness of what your uniqueness is and your offering. And one of the things that's made me kind of stay around, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, you're an original OG, because I am an OG, but my OG has been, I'm always out there, marketing, LinkedIn, consistent on social media, all of that. And I see a lot of businesses are not really looking great online, in terms of their branding, how they look, their social media. If you don't have that shop front that looks good, if you see a wedding dress and you go, oh, I love that wedding dress, you're going to go into the shop and you're going to go find out more. Your shop front, no matter what it looks like, needs to look really, really good all the time. And I think for me, that has made me be sustainable, even though there's been good times and bad times. But I've always kept my profile, kept my business going, and I've always got experts, and I'm always ready for things that are going to go wrong, because things do go wrong. So I think it is about expertise. It's about getting a mentor if you can. If I had a mentor 20-something years ago, I'd be a lot more further. But now you've got a mentor, value yourself. And I think the last one is definitely AI. That's something that everyone needs to think about, because that is literally taking over. So that's it for me.
So on to the last question, which I think is very important to the Black society as well. How can collaboration among Black-led organisations strengthen the overall funding landscape? Obviously, there's lots of people in this room who are from our community. Jovis, you've got the mic. Can you go first?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, Anton. I want to put something called I think with the scaling, hopefully our go into that other part as well. But with the scaling, I think it's important to. We've seen a few different companies scale, and one of the things that I've sort of categorized this into two things that I've observed. It's easy to think about scaling as sort of linear scaling. And what I mean by that is make X amount, call it 100K last year. Next year, we're going to make 150K. To do that, I need to increase my staff capacity, time, etc. The year after that, I do the same thing. So there's a relationship between the time and the scaling, whether scaling is impact related or growth of the business. One thing that we've seen work really well, so nothing's wrong with that. That's linear growth, linear scaling. The other side of it, the other category of what we've seen is there's also some sort of exponential scaling that you could do as well. And what I mean by that is when you get stuff like grant funding, it's easy to say, okay, grant funding for this next year is going to absorb the capacity, the time, it's going to cover the time of my program manager, etc. And keep going through that journey. But there's also an option to use the grant funding to invest in an asset. And what I mean by that is grant funding is hard to acquire an asset. It's hard to say, okay, with this grant funding, I'm going to purchase this building. But you can use grant funding or concessional funding to create something that's going to allow for scale. And what I mean by that, I mean, there's examples in the audience. Ethan, Aspiring Heads, I've seen you lot do something similar, like therapy as well. And what that means is you're getting grant funding, you're creating a platform of something, even if it's a digital platform, that's going to allow for your operations to scale in a way that doesn't require your time dedicated to continuously have to increase. So I just wanted to throw that out there, as I think it's important. What was the question?
So how can collaboration in the space like this help the funding landscape for Black organisations?
So speaking to each other, again, there's examples like Ethan with Aspiring Heads, they do some great work with their academy platform that they've built. Like Therapy got some great work. There's others in the audience, in the panel, and people that are just doing really good work and examples of investing that grant funding into assets and scaling. And I think that's one of the ways, being able to collaborate. You can collaborate with forming consortiums for grant funding, etc. But I think beyond that, it's the connecting with people, sharing the experiences, learning from each other, and collaborating on projects where those visions overlap.
So
If you haven't tried the food, I suggest you try the food. I'm going to give Papa's Grill a shout out. I'm going to show my age a bit. BT used to add adverts that says it's good to talk. I think it's about relationship building. When the food arrived, I followed Femi to the back and said, do you know who I am? So many moons ago, I used to own a restaurant, I used to be head chef, and I met him in one of the restaurants I was a head chef at. And whilst we were talking, Samuel came along and spoke about some of the plans they've got in the future. Again, that's just by talking about our love for food, what I do as a youth mentor. And Samuel said, actually, we've got plans in the pipeline. So straight away, we're going to have a conversation with at least the three of us and other organizations in the room to say, look, we're going to do this really powerful joint venture, and we're going to evaluate it. We're going to show local authorities the impact and show them actually you can trust us. We have the capacity, the capabilities. We can do this now. You can trust us as well. So I think for me, it's just the talking piece, the networking piece, and they show them that we have the foundations to do what you might not trust us to do.
And to Mavis and Dave, how do organisations get away from, let's say, a crabs in the barrel type mindset, thinking, well, I've got the money, I can't tell anyone else about it because that means I'll get less money from my organisation?
Thank you. That food was really nice. Talking about food, those prawns are really good. Oh, love it. See, it's good to talk about collaboration. Again, for me, as I keep saying to people, you have to think outside the box. You need to scale up, think and work with people who are much bigger than you. That's one thing that you need to do. I think that's something that I've done over the years. Have a very big vision, because again, you have a big vision and you might not get to 100, but you might get to 80 because your vision is so big. So you have to look at that, coming outside your comfort zone. But collaboration and partnership as businesses, I don't want to say black businesses, every business is a business. If you're working, if you've got a high street and you've got other businesses who are next to you, you guys can all work together and you can collaborate. And I think that's what helps us. And we need to be able to work in partnership, collectively, and consistently. I think that's something that's really missing, consistency and understanding that things are going to happen. But if you are consistent, you will definitely get to where you need to get to. Thank you.
Clara, final thought.
Well, I mean, just also linking back to what you were saying, Jervis, the reason we aren't looking to be 80 people at 10 million is because of that exact realization that it is possible to stay small, but also punch way above your weight and do so in a healthy way that is able to support a team properly. And I only realized that because I've started talking to people that I have no business trying to talk to if I was going the kind of crabs in a barrel mentality. It's like, just talk to everybody, share what you're doing, share the idea, and maybe they'll be doing something or they'll be able to link you to someone else that is doing something similar or very, very different. I think if you look at it from a humility perspective, there is always something to learn, as opposed to if you are open enough to share something, you will learn so much more in return because people will be open to share with you as well. So if you're just like, actually, I don't know as much as I would like to know, the only way to get there is by sharing what you're doing with people and giving them the space to give you that same kind of transparency back. And also, the more you share, the more you have people that you can call when something bad happens. Because things, as Mavis was saying, things go up, things go down. It can get really, really scary out here. And you just have to have someone that you can call and be like, I don't know why this is happening to me. If you haven't built that vulnerability by sharing even just the business side of things, you never have the opportunity to try and knock on that door to see if someone will be able to support you when something does happen. So it's an artificial competition that we're feeling. It's not real. It is something that we're creating in ourselves. And you have to take the step in your own self to say, I'm not going to feed into this. If someone decides to kind of respond in a negative way, that is them, that is not you. And you can move on and you will find people that are willing to engage with you in an honest and transparent way.
So, Anton, just 30 seconds. I think sometimes there's I think sometimes the challenge is you're afraid people might steal your ideas. And my colleagues always speak to me about that. And we've experienced that. A local authority stole an idea and I challenged them and they apologized. However, if you have that unique selling point, if you believe in what you're doing, that's fine, they can steal the idea, but you have the originality. Now, we attract more young people to what we're doing than the local authority does with the same idea that they stole from us. So just believe in what you're doing and you'll be all right, you'll get there.
On that note, believe in what you're doing. Can we give a round of applause? We do now have a very brief Q&A, so if you have any questions, we'll be able to take them now.
Question.
If you introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, I'm Yomi from Online Essential and Digital Marketing in the property space. My question was because of the way Bio explained, just like a lot of the funding challenges, and does anyone on the panel can answer this question, but does anyone know of any resources that one can just digest over time, maybe on a weekly or monthly basis, that will just help us become more informed about the high level options, whether it's grant funding or just the different types of options we can learn about things like blended finance, because I didn't know what that was.
Can I just answer that one?
Yeah.
I think one thing we got to remember as human beings, and it's just like when you go to school, you grow, isn't it? You start at primary school and you get to secondary, go to university. That's exactly the same thing that we have to do in business, because there's so much to learn. Even me that's been around for a long time, every day I'm learning something new. So in terms of resources, again, you can go onto the internet. A lot of people say to me, what's the difference between a charity, CIC, social enterprise? I don't understand. You go online and it even makes it worse because it doesn't make any sense. Unless you understand it, then you can explain it to someone. So I think there isn't resources, but again, just go online and get yourself a mentor. There's lots of great people out there that will help you, outside of the community, but start off with more about looking at loans for business, looking at grants and the different type of grant funding. But most importantly, once you understand your vision and your purpose, where you want to go, then you can go in small chunks. I think sometimes we're all trying to run, but if someone like myself, I've been around for a long time, so I've got so much knowledge, but Now we've got the whole kind of technology that can help us. So I would say start off small, get yourself a mentor, and just stick to one or two things. Business loans, that's fine. Grants, trusts and foundations, fine. When you start going into investments, equity, you're going to get confused, so just try and stick to that and get a mentor.
I think David spoke about AI, type it into AI. You might not know who I am, I know who you are. You have Ishmael Shodi around you. You have people around you who you can utilize and speak to, but don't be afraid to Google it. Go on LinkedIn, follow all the funders, speak to the people around you. I grew up in Hackney, I know you very well. So look, there's 4 people on the stage that you can speak to after this. There's people in the room you can speak to. It's not always rocket science. Type into Google if you don't have LinkedIn.
I just wanted to say that some of the specific resources that I've used. I subscribe to the Third Sector newsletter. That unfortunately most of the charity news has started putting a paid membership behind absolutely everything. But at least you can see what the headline is, and then you can Google the headline and then figure out what they're talking about because someone somewhere else would have said it for free. So I subscribe to that newsletter, and then I used to do this, but because of the growth that we've achieved, we're relationship based with our funders now. But before that, I used to go on to Charity Excellence. And Ian, who runs Charity Excellence, is obsessed with ensuring that small organizations have as much knowledge about all of the different options that are available to them. And they have some assessment tools as well on that. So they have that's a good database. If you're interested in investment generally, there's a really good course that some of my team have done actually on social finance, but that's run by Good Finance. So that's by Better Society Capital, whose mandate is to ensure that social investment is as equitable as possible. So you can go onto that course, and they give you a bursary if you complete it. And then, well, shameless plug, but we've run many training sessions for our grantees as well as our clients and things like that. And we agree with all of our clients that we can record every session, and then we put every session on our platform, so it's available to everybody to just go and search. All the training sessions we've run for the past 4 years are in a library, accessible for free. And you can just say, oh, I want to learn about legal structures. Click there. Someone has done a training session for us, and you can watch that. So, and we're not the only one that does that. There's lots of organizations that have those databases. The problem is, someone described it to me, it's a zero-sum game. Once you know about one, you can know about all, but if you don't know about one, you don't know about any. So those are just a few of the things that help me kind of figure out what this sector is.
And Jarvis, I know you wanted to add something, but your book is literally there. So I know it's hard for us to promote ourselves sometimes. If you give me a book, what knowledge would someone get just from simply reading the book?
Yeah, thanks, Anton. And I agree with all the panelists. I think that there's a need to understand and we talk about it in the book, there's a need to understand the funder's vision. And a lot of times we work not just in the UK, we work abroad as well. A lot of times, especially abroad, when you're facing barriers to access funding, it's important to be in the same room as the funders, understand their vision, and start. And it's perfectly fine. It's what you're supposed to do. So the book is, I mean, I have to say, so we've put a fair amount of work into it, but essentially it's a guide that allows you to navigate fundraising by keeping vision at the focus of it. Vision needs to be the anchor. Again, the first thing I said is you're solving a problem, and the funding is a fuel that supports your vehicle, the business, to actually achieve that vision. And that requires a lot of what has been mentioned by our panelists. Being in the room with the funder, understanding the landscape, and seeing where there's collaboration. Funding, the last thing I'll say is funding is partnership. That's the way we approach it. If you're getting grant funding, the grant fund is not above you. They're partnering with you. They need you to be able to implement their funding in the context that you serve to be able to create the impact that is needed. We talk about all of that in the book, but there's plenty of resources out there as well.
Can I just say,
sorry, Jarvis.
Can I just say, Jarvis would like to give one book to Lomi.
Just quickly for those who want to get the book, where can they get it?
Yeah, sure. So there's, I believe Rachel and the team's going to send around links afterwards, but it's available on ARC, website primarily at the moment, which is arcgroupint.com.
We're coming to an end, so we can start the networking. We've got the business draw as well. But for each one of our panelists, how can people contact you, or how can you help them if they want more information about what you do, or they want to support your organisation? Just go from right to left.
If you'd like to contact me specifically, the easiest way to do so is LinkedIn. I know it sounds like I'm ducking you. I promise I'm not, because my inbox is overflowing constantly. So I try to shift people to LinkedIn so I can at least know. I can at least save my mental space a little bit. But yeah, LinkedIn. Otherwise, my email, if you really want to email me, it's bio@doitnownow.com. You can email me, but LinkedIn is easiest. And if you want to know what Do It Now Now is up to, doitnownow.com. We've got a website. We've got a website. We've got a section on our website called What's On, and there you'll see what events we've got coming up. Our latest campaign called London Now Now, and all of our current programs. We have a food program, for-profit and non-profit grants, and we've got some cool stuff. We've got a blended finance program coming up as well, where we provide grant and we partner with the loan provider as well on the same contract. So definitely interested in talking to people about like if you had a dream vision for what funding existed, our job is to figure that out and then go pitch it to a funder to say, can you give us a whole bunch of money to design this, and then give it to people and see what they say.
Yes.
LinkedIn as well. So I apply to pretty much everything. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn and send messages. If I can't answer, I can point you at least hopefully in the right direction with a team member. We also have office hours, which means that there's open slots to speak to new businesses that just want to pick our brains on fundraising. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Link over to you.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm doing very well on TikTok. TikTok was very interesting because at first I thought that sounds really silly, but my TikTok is really grown and it's all about funding to go into my TikTok. And if anyone wants to get some funding and you want to know what fund is available, I have a list available. So I'll share the links with Rachel, and then you can just email me business@mavisamanqua.com, and I can send you the actual list of 10 funders that you could go for. We can kind of drill it down to what kind of funding you're looking for, your industry and sector. So that's business@mavisamanqua.com. But LinkedIn, but TikTok, you'll find me there.
What's your TikTok handle?
Mavisamanqua. Yeah. Okay, great.
I think for me, yeah, simple. I always walk around with a baseball cap, hoodie, shirt, gilet, whatever, and it says the Wickers charity on it. But if you want to get hold of me, sam@wickers.org.uk.
Can we give a round of applause to our
I didn't get a chance to put my name in there, that's not fair.
Steve Leon. Steve Leon.
I think I'm going to butcher your last name, but Tanya Popelu? How do I say your name properly? Oh, no, sorry, it did not look like that.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to the panel. It was absolutely amazing, each and every one of you. I'm really excited to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Great. So can we have another big thank you to the panel? I don't know about you, but for me, yeah, very engaging. Some key points there, some quotables. I hope we have it recorded because there's some quotables that I want to be able to share across social media as well. But
I think Jovis has got one more book to give away.
one more book, we will be giving that away at some point today. But I think, again, for us, hopefully from what you heard, a really important subject, especially with our vision in that collaboration piece. As you would have heard a few different times here, everybody's trying to be everything to everyone, trying to take on their organizations, do every single role within their organization. And when we think about collaboration and the support that's potentially out there, being in rooms like this where you can understand, even think about your supply chain, who potentially can you work with across your supply chain to help you to deliver more efficiently. We talk a lot about, through our different networks, economies of scale. We always give the example, I'm from Southwark, Southeast London, but we have a lot of hairdressers. And if you open up any funding pot, 5K, 10K, you'll have a lot of hairdressers that will sort of come for that pot. Being able to actually discuss with them and have sessions like this with one sector of organizations to identify how potentially do you work together? How do you benefit from economies of scale when it comes to your suppliers, for instance, when it comes to your venues and costs? And that's really thinking about how do we support each other to benefit through what we're doing and what we're trying to deliver to communities. So keeping the vision first, as mentioned, is always a key, but where we have a lot of aligned visions in the room and we are working in a very similar way to what we want to deliver to our communities, there's a lot more room for collaboration, community, communication to ensure that we can help each other to scale for those that want to as well. So with that, I think we're going to move into the networking element. But yes, before we do, I want to give a big thank you to Lydia and everyone at the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry for having us today, University of Westminster as well. Thank you very much for having us. Before we close, we'll have Malik with some few statements.
Just to echo again, yes, thank you for all coming. Thank the University of Westminster for supporting the Black Business Association and the events just like this that we run quarterly. So this isn't the only one. In Black Society, we do many events like this, many assemblies. The London Chamber and the Black Business Association do as well. So if you're looking to find out, more information about funding, networking, how to promote your business, what needs to take you to the next step, these are the forums and the resources that are here for you to rely on. So don't feel shy, don't stay at home, turn out, be part of your community and share those opportunities. Thank the fantastic panel with so much information, because I think it's crucial to have such leaders in our community that we can actually look to ask these questions and that may be able to answer. So, once again, please think of the London Chamber, think of Black Society when you have those needs, and enjoy the rest of the evening and network.
Before you go, there is a QR code on the screen, so please, if you haven't already signed up to the Black Society newsletter, scan the QR code, stay up to date information. There is a quote that some of you know that many are called, but few are chosen to be here. Make sure you connect with people.
Alright, there we go. There should be. No, let's use yours. Yours is going to be better. There we go. It's a bit fiddly. You can either hold